Hello, my name is Rick Hernandez, and I'm from Nevada County Cooperative Extension, and I am for the soils because it is the foundation of all our fruits and vegetables.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii. Mary Sketch Bryant and Eric Benfelt will join me with a special guest in just a couple of moments, but we always like to remind our listeners, for the soil. What does that mean, for? Well, it's the digit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the soil. That's because there's 4 components to healthy soils. Number 1, keep the soil covered. Number 2, minimize soil disturbance. Number 3, maximize living roots. And number 4, energize with diversity. And that's why we call this For the Soil, a Conversation. Now let's get to this week's episode. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii, and joining me, my co-host, Mary Sketch Bryant with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition, and Eric Benfelt with the Virginia Cooperative Extension Community Viability. Mary and Eric, I'm really excited about our guest today. He has a really interesting background, and I'm sure he's going to share some interesting stories about what he does regarding soil health. Mary, if you would do the introduction, please.
Thanks, Jeff. Really excited to have Justin Proctor joining us today from Front Royal, Virginia. Justin is the Virginia Grassland Bird Initiative Coordinator with Virginia Working Landscapes, which is a program of Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. When I was looking at Justin's background, I always think that I've been a lot of places through my work and seen things and done cool things. And then I realized Justin well outdid me. So he has a bachelor's in marine biology from University of Maine and a master's from Cornell in natural resources. Grew up on a hay and cattle farm in New York, and so brings that agricultural experience to the work, but then has worked with the National Park Service, done underwater research in the Bay of Fundy, youth adventure tourism, teaching high school environmental science, and now working with grassland bird efforts in Virginia. So I guess to start things off, Justin, would love to just hear kind of what brought you to this intersection of agriculture and wildlife conservation that you're at right now.
Yeah, Mary, thanks so much for having me today. I appreciate it. I got almost just kind of tired hearing that list. I wonder why I need 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night at this point. Yeah, it's been a fun journey. Basically, I grew up on a hay and cattle farm in Western New York. That was my first 18 years of my life, and then I went off and did about 15 years of science and conservation in all sorts of different places. I started in the marine biology world and loved it. And then I was in a lot of cold water. I eventually got a little cold, to be honest, and decided to try out some terrestrial biology work and got connected with Cornell University. And they had this big study of swallows, actually, this really cool genus of birds, family of birds, actually. And so once you go down the ornithological pathway, you don't come back. So I kind of got sucked into that for the next 10 years. And here I am, found my way to the Smithsonian here in Front Royal, Virginia. So it's been a fun journey. Started doing farming when I was young, and then got to do a lot of science and conservation. And then I found this program with the Smithsonian, the Virginia Working Landscapes, that was able to allow me to put farming and science and conservation all together in one place, which is what I'm really excited about. So, and we'll chat some more about that today.
And Justin, with that, I often find there's a disconnect with people in their understanding of farming and agriculture. Could you tell us more about the mission and goals of the Virginia Working Landscapes program?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So our kind of overarching goal is to build back biodiversity on working landscapes. So we're really working alongside farmers to figure out how to integrate wildlife conservation, essentially, and biodiversity conservation into agriculture. And a lot of what I do is thinking about how to merge biodiversity conservation into regenerative practices that are already being promoted on these landscapes. So we're trying to put it all together as one package deal for farmers. And yeah, the overarching goal here again is the fact that all these things can work together, and we have all these private landscapes. You know, the majority of Virginia, the majority of the United States is privately owned at this point. And when we look at where conservation is being done and where it needs to be done, we've got a lot of great conservation going on in our public spaces, our national parks, our national forests, and that's great. We need to keep that going. But we really, considering the bulk of the land is privately owned, we really need to be thinking hard about how to bring conservation to private lands. And in Virginia and in many other states, a big portion of those private lands are farms. And so we think a lot about how do we bring ecosystem functionality back to these farms in a way that it's going to work for the farmers? That's number one. That's the most important thing. This has got to work for the farmers. This has got to continue to drive profit. This has got to make their lives easier at the end of the day. How do we make this work for farmers? But how do we also make it work for wildlife, for watershed health, for soil health, like we'll talk some more about today? How do we put all these pieces together? Because it is complex. Farming is a complex job, right? And it's not getting any easier. There are a lot of variables in that equation. So if we're adding another one, if we're saying, hey, we really want to protect the birds that are out there, your native plant communities, your soil health, we can't add that into a farmer's day unless we have some really constructive ways of bringing that information in a way that it's going to help that farmer. It's going to build landscape resiliency. It's going to come back to benefit their operation. It's going to be better weight gain for their cattle, better forage for whatever livestock they have, better hay production. So we're really trying to put it all together in a way that it's going to work.
We're talking today with Justin Proctor. He is coordinator of Virginia Grassland Bird Initiative, and also he is coordinator of the Virginia Working Landscapes Program, which is a part of Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. And I want to go to the website. By the way, there's a couple of websites that our listeners can go to. First of all, vaworkinglandscapes.org. And the second one about the Virginia Grassland Bird Initiative is vagrasslandbirds.org. But back to the Virginia Working Landscapes, Justin. On your front page, you talk about community engagement. I'd specifically like to know, how do you engage with farmers? How do you reach Virginia farmers and other farmers in our region?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's number one on what we all do every day. We think a lot about outreach. We think a lot about conversations with our farmers. We think a lot about how we can work alongside them in trying to tackle some of these bigger issues we're up against, how to have sustainable food systems, and also use all this land in terms of conservation as well. So how do we open the doors to these farms? I mean, we get this question a lot. Are farmers receptive? Are we able to have these conversations? Are we having to cold call? This is something a lot of people are really interested in. And we are extremely fortunate for a few reasons. One, farmers, in the bulk of them, recognize that it is a complex job out there right now. The weather is often working against them. There's more and more variables, invasive species out there. There's thin profit margins. Farmers recognize the need to find partners in all this and to try to figure it out. And, Virginia Working Landscapes very much has its roots in farmers coming to us with questions and saying, can you guys, as the Smithsonian, could you guys have the expertise to help us figure some of this out? Could you do some research on these local landscapes here in the northern Piedmont, northern Shenandoah Valley, and help us figure out how to make this all work? And that's really what we're born out of, is this collaborative relationship with farmers. And so from the beginning, it's been a good team. And it continues to grow from there. The program we create, the research we do, the information we find, and it's all applied research. Everything we're looking at, it has an application to it, right? Whatever we learn, the goal is to immediately find a way to turn that into a best management practice, and then find a way to get that BMP implemented on these landscapes. So looking for different cost share programs, different partners to help get that out, whether it's NRCS or Soil and Water, or many other partners. Our goal, we have the research in-house, we have the conservation in-house, and we have the implementation, the whole pipeline really in-house, which is very powerful. We can move knowledge through that pipeline and get it onto the ground quickly. So we have designed ourselves in a way that we can benefit farmers quite quickly. These questions come up, and we hope that within a couple of years, we can have some pretty good research to help inform some action on these questions. So really getting to the answer to your question is that from the beginning, it's been very collaborative, and we don't have to cold call farmers. It's not as if we're driving around in trucks, knocking on doors, trying to see if anybody's interested in working with us. We can't keep up with the demand, actually, that comes to us, because our farming community is really this nexus for taking local research and applying it and trying to figure out how the next 5 to 10 years or 25 years are going to look on a farm, and to be efficient at it and to drive a profit out of all this. And so it feels good. It's good energy. And we, again, our biggest thing is finding the capacity to keep up with the demand and make sure we have the time and energy to spend with these farmers and address all the biggest questions they're looking to address.
In Justin, pulling off of that community engagement piece and also the research, I want to dive into some of what you're finding on the BMP side that's really working for biodiversity, but also taking a step back. If I'm remembering right, Virginia Working Landscapes has done some social science work and partnered with some social scientists. I'm guessing your first start with a farmer isn't always, let's get more wildlife on your farm. What are you seeing is working engagement wise? What are the connection points? Is it soil health? Is it the economics? What's the buy-in?
Yeah, those are great questions. That is the core of what we think about all day, every day, is how to have these. What are the conversations that are going to open the door and lead to conservation action? What is important to farmers right now, and how is what is important to them? How does that relate back to biodiversity conservation? How does this, we think a lot about the ecology of an entire farm. And that's something we really try to talk to farmers about, is looking at this mosaic of habitats that they have across their entire farms. They might have a wooded patch. They might have some wetlands, a pond. They might have a river running through. They have some grasslands, especially around here. We have a lot of beautiful grasslands. We look at this mosaic of habitats and we say, how does this all work with a farm? What are all the production goals here? And then what are all the ways we can integrate wildlife conservation into this in a way that's going to pair well with the regenerative agriculture that they're already aiming towards? The social science piece you hit on is everything. And that's something that we've recognized over the years that we want more and more of, because conservation through and through is the people. It's up to them, right, to do conservation. You can't just do conservation, especially on private lands. It has to be something that people, like you say, there's a buy-in. What's in it for them? How do you get them excited about wanting to do this type of conservation? We think about that all the time because we really want conservation to be fun. As simple as that sounds, it shouldn't be another chore being added onto the chore list for a farmer. It should be something where they see this conservation piece as being like, that's the really fun part of my day, is to be thinking about the wildlife I'm bringing back onto my property now that I'm doing X, Y, and Z with my farming operation. Or, wow, look, the water quality in the stream that I have a half-mile stream frontage has totally changed in the last 5 years. The trout have come back, all these things. We want the wildlife conservation to kind of feel like the reward of the farming practices that these farmers are trying to tweak to work better for wildlife, but also for their operations. So, yes, we spend a lot of time talking to farmers to gauge what interests them, and there's a lot of ways to go about that. I'll say my biggest thing is just the first thing you always want to do when you're talking to these farmers is just to listen. I think we can all agree about that. We're not coming in with an agenda. We're not coming in trying to tell them what to do on their property. It's to listen to what they're interested in, what they're concerned about, and then figure out how our programs can come in and make their lives a little easier and maybe bring some excitement in terms of how they're doing some of these practices and what they're going to get out of them. So from my angle, as coordinator of the Virginia Grassland Bird Initiative, I really use birds as a tool to get farmers excited about some of these conservation practices. And we have this incredible suite of birds that uses Virginia farmlands. We have over 60 species of birds that just use Virginia grasslands. And when I talk about grasslands, I'm also talking the surrogate grasslands that farms have. So hayfields, livestock pastures, right? There are a lot of really cool birds around here. And most farmers have a connection to a couple of those species, whether it's bobwhite quail and what those populations used to look like back when they were younger, whether it's eastern meadowlarks, which are our showiest bird on the farms right now, these bright yellow colors flying around all day, or whether it's the swallows that come in and feed over the grasses after they've been cut. People have a connection with a bird or two on their property. So I really like to lean into kind of the wildlife conservation topic first, because that's a fun one that everybody likes to talk about, and then figure out which of those birds they're interested in, how those connect back to the habitats on the farm, and then take a closer look at how those habitats are being managed. And then we kind of just grow from there, right? So there are a lot of great groups that can come and offer all sorts of technical assistance on a farm. free knowledge. And we work with a lot of these groups. A lot of us have different cost share money, different incentives money to also help on these farms. But we all have slightly different angles on how to get on a farm, right? Some people are coming from the soil world. Some people are coming from water quality. We really like to come from this biodiversity, the plants and the animals on your farm. And it's another way for us to maybe open some doors to farms. Whereas maybe partners wouldn't have been able to have that same angle and open that door. And then we open the door for all of those partners and vice versa. It's one big conservation team around here, which is exciting, that we all try to develop these relationships and then try to open the doors for some of the other partners to come on and help contribute the programming that they have.
Just I have a question building off of that. It might lead into the next episode, but within considering farmland protection and in Virginia, we've seen so much fragmentation and parcelization. Like I'm located just a half mile from the I-81 and there's the I-66 corridor, I-95 corridor. And with that fragmentation, there's more interactions with people not familiar with agriculture or conservation, but then there's also wildlife interactions that farmers are dealing with as well, with everything from coyotes and deer to raccoons. And how are you all dealing with this fragmentation and parcelization of working lands and what that means for conservation?
Yeah, that's a big topic, Eric. I appreciate that question. It's fragmentation. I think our partners at the Piedmont Environmental Council say it the best, that farmland lost is farmland lost forever. That's Piedmont Environmental Council, American Farmland Trust, and all these partners who've come back, come together to really stress the fact that once you lose farmland, it doesn't come back. And the challenges that we're trying to feed more and more people with less and less land, right? Which means we're having to be harder on that land to produce that volume of food. So it's a scary equation. And so the good news is we have some of the most incredible land trusts I've ever worked with in this part of Virginia who have done for 30 plus years, many of them, an incredible job of protecting a lot of this farmland in permanent conservation easements, which is really powerful. If you ever have a day where you're feeling a little doomy and gloomy, pull up some of the maps of how much of this land in Virginia is now in conservation easement and protected in perpetuity from any sort of development or fragmentation. And it is incredibly inspiring. I mean, the state of Virginia just lights up, and they're being very strategic also in how they're trying to do it to make sure that certain types of development can't expand beyond certain areas, right? They're literally putting up these easement walls, which is really impressive to see, to make sure that we keep our keep the character of our rural landscapes where we want it.
Justin, I hate to jump in here, but we're out of time.
Yeah.
In this episode, I want to continue this conversation. If you can stay with us for a second episode, and then we'll continue this discussion about farmland preservation and conservation and how all of that is tied into soil health. We've been talking today with Justin Proctor, coordinator of the Virginia Grassland Bird Initiative, and he is also coordinator of Virginia Working Landscapes, which is a program of the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. And Justin, we really look forward to continuing the conversation 2 weeks from now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Mary and Eric, we'll catch you in the next one.
Yeah, thank you so much, Justin and Jeff.
For the Soil Conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. If you have a specific question about soil health, just contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of the Flip Charts, all rights reserved. For the Soil Conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii.